Hello guys and welcome to the Expensive Coins History channel. Imagine finding a coin in your old collection and discovering it is worth $176,000, $140,000, $129,000, $153,000, even $149,000.
Sounds impossible?
It happens more often than you think. And the most shocking part is that these are not ancient coins, not gold coins, not coins that only professional collectors can find. These are ordinary-looking Washington quarter-dollar coins that millions of people used every single day. The kind of coins that were dropped into pockets, forgotten in drawers, and left inside old coin jars for decades. That is exactly why this video is so important for you to watch from the beginning until the end, because one of the coins I am about to talk about might already be sitting in your collection without you even realizing it. But before we go deeper into this story, take just 1 second and subscribe to the channel, because every single week we talk about coins that people ignore but collectors quietly search for. And if you enjoy discovering hidden value in everyday coins, this is exactly the place where you belong. Now let's begin with the first coin, and trust me, the story behind this one is far more surprising than most people expect. When people think about valuable coins, their minds usually go straight to very old coins from the early 1900s or even the 1800s. But the coin we are starting with today is from 1980. That means many of the people watching this video were already alive when this coin was being used in daily life. Some of you may have even spent this exact coin without thinking twice. And that is what makes this story so powerful, because it shows how value is not always about age. Sometimes value is about something much deeper, something hidden that only collectors know how to recognize. The 1980p Washington quarter dollar looks completely ordinary at first glance. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of George Washington, a design that millions of people have seen for decades. Nothing about it looks rare. Nothing about it looks special. And that is exactly why so many of these coins pass through people's hands without anyone stopping to look closely. But collectors are not looking for what is obvious. They are looking for what most people miss, and that is where the story begins to change. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the United States Mint was producing huge numbers of quarters because the demand for coins was extremely high. People were using coins more than ever before in vending machines, parking meters, and everyday transactions. Because of this massive production, the quality control was not always perfect. Tiny mistakes, small variations, and unusual details started appearing in coins that most people thought were completely normal. But to collectors, these small details are not mistakes. They are opportunities. The 1980p Washington quarter became one of those coins that quietly entered circulation without attracting attention. People used it, stored it, and forgot about it. But years later, collectors started noticing something very interesting. Some of these coins had extremely sharp details, far sharper than the average coin from that year. The lines in Washington's hair looked clearer. The lettering looked stronger. Even the surface of the coin looked smoother than what you would normally expect from a coin that was produced in such large numbers. At first, this didn't seem like a big deal. But then collectors began comparing these coins side by side with regular examples, and the difference became impossible to ignore. The rare versions stood out immediately. They looked cleaner, more precise, and far more detailed. And that is the moment when curiosity turned into excitement. Because in the world of coin collecting, when something stands out this clearly, it usually means one thing: rarity. Now imagine this situation for a moment. Two coins are sitting next to each other. Both say 1980. Both have the same design. Both look like they came from the same place. But one of them is just an ordinary coin worth face value, while the other one could be worth thousands of dollars. The difference is not something you notice instantly. You have to look closely. You have to know what you are looking for. And that is exactly why so many valuable coins remain hidden for years. Collectors began searching more aggressively for the 1980p Washington quarter, especially the versions that showed exceptional quality and strong details. As more people started paying attention, fewer of these coins were being found. That is how rarity becomes even more powerful over time. The more collectors search, the more they realize that the truly special examples are extremely difficult to find. And once something becomes difficult to find, its importance grows dramatically. Another reason why this coin became so interesting is because 1980 was not a year that most collectors expected to produce anything valuable. It was seen as a normal year, a quiet year, nothing dramatic or historic. But sometimes the most surprising discoveries happen in the years that people ignore. That is exactly what happened here. Collectors who were patient enough to check their coins slowly began finding examples that were far better than expected. And once those discoveries started appearing, the entire collecting community began paying attention. Think about how many coins were circulating during that time. Millions upon millions of quarters moving through stores, markets, gas stations, and everyday transactions. Somewhere inside that massive flow of coins were a few examples that stood out far above the rest. The problem was that most people were not looking. They were simply spending coins without a second thought. That is why some of these valuable coins may still be hidden today in old collections, forgotten boxes, or jars that have not been opened for years. The story becomes even more exciting when you realize that condition plays a huge role in value. A coin that looks clean, sharp, and well-preserved can be worth dramatically more than one that looks worn out. That means the coins that were saved by chance, maybe by someone who simply liked collecting coins as a hobby, are often the ones that later become incredibly valuable. It was not planned. It was not intentional. It was simply luck combined with time. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters understand this better than anyone. They know that certain years can surprise the entire collecting world when the right example appears. The 1980p Washington quarter slowly became one of those coins that collectors watch carefully. When a high-quality example appears, people immediately pay attention. Not because the coin is old, not because it is made of silver, but because it is rare in the way that truly matters to collectors. And this is the moment where the story becomes personal for you. Because unlike extremely rare coins that only exist in museums or professional collections, this coin is different. It was part of everyday life. It was used by ordinary people. It was handled by millions of hands. That means there is always a chance that one of these rare examples is still hiding somewhere that nobody has checked properly. Maybe inside an old family coin collection. Maybe inside a drawer that has not been opened for years. Maybe even inside a group of coins that someone thought were completely ordinary. The excitement of coin collecting does not come from looking at coins that everyone already knows are valuable. The real excitement comes from discovering something unexpected. And the 1980p Washington quarter represents exactly that kind of discovery. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but the moment you start paying attention to the details, everything begins to change. That is when curiosity turns into excitement, and excitement turns into the possibility of something truly valuable. Imagine opening a small coin box that has been sitting untouched for years. You begin looking through the coins one by one, not expecting anything unusual. Then suddenly you notice a quarter from 1980. At first, it does not seem important. But then you remember what you heard in this video. You look a little closer. The details look sharper than normal. The lettering looks stronger. The coin looks cleaner than the others. And in that moment, what seemed ordinary just seconds ago starts to feel completely different. This is exactly how many valuable coins are discovered. Not by experts in large auction houses, not by professional dealers with expensive equipment, but by ordinary people who simply take the time to look carefully. That is the difference between ignoring coins and understanding them. Once you start paying attention, you begin to see details that most people miss. And once you see those details, the entire world of coin collecting becomes far more exciting than you ever imagined. The 1980p Washington quarter is not just a coin. It is a reminder that value can hide in the most unexpected places. It shows that something that looks simple can become extraordinary when the right details are present. And most importantly, it proves that valuable coins are not always locked away in museums. Sometimes they are still out there, waiting for someone patient enough to notice them. And this is only the first coin in this video. The next one becomes even more surprising, because the year might look completely ordinary, but the story behind it shocked collectors when it first started gaining attention. Now let's move forward, because the second coin takes the story into an even more unexpected direction. After hearing about the 1980p, you might start thinking that maybe only older coins from the early 80s carry this kind of hidden potential. But that assumption is exactly what makes the next coin so fascinating. Because the next coin comes from a time when people had already become used to modern coins. A time when most collectors believed that valuable discoveries were becoming less common. And yet, this coin proved them wrong in a way that no one saw coming. The 1990 Washington quarter dollar entered circulation just like any other coin. It was produced in massive numbers, sent out into everyday transactions, and handled by millions of people without a second thought. There was nothing about its release that suggested it would become special. No major historical event attached to it. No immediate sign of rarity. It was simply another coin in a long line of quarters that people used daily. And that is exactly why this coin became so powerful in the world of collecting. Because when something appears completely ordinary, people stop paying attention. They assume there is nothing to discover. They assume that every coin from that year is the same. And that assumption is where opportunity begins. Over time, collectors started noticing something unusual about certain 1990 quarters. At first, it was subtle. A small detail here, a slightly sharper feature there. But the more they compared coins, the more they realized that some examples stood far above the rest. These were not just well-preserved coins. These were coins with a level of precision and clarity that was not common for that year. The Denver Mint, where this coin was produced, was known for high output. Large quantities of coins were being struck to meet demand, and when production is that high, consistency can become a challenge. Tiny variations begin to appear. Most of them go unnoticed, but occasionally something different emerges, something that catches the attention of experienced collectors. With the 1990 Washington quarter, certain coins showed exceptionally strong strikes. The details in Washington's profile appeared more defined. The edges of the lettering looked crisp and bold. Even the overall surface had a cleaner, more refined appearance compared to standard examples. These differences might seem small to someone who is not familiar with coins, but to a collector they are everything, because in the world of coin collecting, perfection is rare. And when a coin comes close to that level of perfection, it becomes something worth chasing. As more collectors began identifying these standout examples, the search intensified. People started going through rolls of quarters, old collections, and bank coins, hoping to find one of these rare, high-quality pieces. But just like with the 1980p, the more people searched, the clearer it became that these coins were not easy to find. They existed, but not in the numbers that most people expected. And that is where the story shifts from curiosity to real excitement. Because rarity alone is not enough. What makes a coin truly valuable is the combination of rarity and demand. And in this case, both were growing at the same time. Collectors wanted these coins, but very few were available in the condition and quality that made them special. That imbalance created something powerful. Now imagine a collector who has been searching for years, going through hundreds or even thousands of coins, looking for that one perfect example. Then one day they find it. A 1990 quarter with sharp details, strong features, and a surface that looks almost untouched by time. In that moment, it is no longer just a coin. It becomes a discovery. And discoveries are what drive the entire coin collecting world. The story of the 1990 Washington quarter is not about age. It is not about metal content. It is about the idea that even in a time when coins were being mass-produced, something exceptional could still emerge. It challenges the belief that modern coins cannot be valuable. It proves that rarity can exist even in places where people are not looking. Think about how many people handled these coins in the 1990s. Grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, everyday transactions happening thousands of times a day. These coins moved constantly from one place to another, rarely staying in one person's possession for long. And during all of that movement, only a very small number remained in the kind of condition that collectors would later consider valuable. That is why so many of these coins are still undiscovered. Because the majority were used, worn down, and eventually lost or forgotten. But the few that survived in exceptional condition became something entirely different. They became rare. And this is where the story connects directly to you again. Because just like the first coin, the 1990 Washington quarter is not something locked away in a private vault that you will never see. It is a coin that once existed in everyday life. That means there is always a chance, even today, that one of these rare examples is still out there, waiting to be found by someone who knows what to look for. Maybe it is in a collection that was started years ago and never completed. Maybe it is in a small box of coins that someone inherited and never examined closely. Maybe it is mixed in with other quarters that all look the same at first glance. The truth is, valuable coins do not always announce themselves. They require attention, they require patience, and sometimes they require a bit of curiosity. This is what separates casual observers from real collectors. A casual observer sees a quarter and thinks of its face value. A collector sees a quarter and thinks of its potential. That difference in perspective is what leads to discoveries. And once you begin to see coins in that way, everything changes. You no longer ignore them. You start examining them. You start comparing them. And slowly, you begin to notice details that were invisible before. The 1990 Washington quarter teaches an important lesson. It shows that even in a modern era, when coins are produced in huge quantities, there is still room for something extraordinary to appear. It reminds us that value is not always obvious. It is often hidden in small details that only reveal themselves to those who are willing to look closely. Now picture this moment clearly. You are going through a group of old coins, not expecting anything unusual. One by one, you check the dates. Most of them seem ordinary. Then you find a 1990 quarter with a small letter D. Normally, you would move on without thinking. But now you pause. You look closer. The details seem sharper. The coin looks cleaner than the others. And suddenly, the ordinary becomes something worth investigating. That moment right there is what this entire journey is about. Because every valuable coin story begins with someone deciding to take a closer look. And just like before, this is only the second coin in this journey. The next coin continues this pattern, but introduces something even more interesting, something that made collectors rethink what they believed about certain years completely. Now the story takes another turn, and this is where things begin to feel even more unexpected. By now, you might be starting to see a pattern. Coins that look ordinary, years that seem unimportant, details that most people ignore. But each time, something hidden changes everything. And the third coin in this journey follows that same path, but with a twist that caught even experienced collectors off guard. The 1995 Washington quarter dollar comes from a time when coin production had become even more advanced. By the mid-1990s, technology had improved, minting processes were more refined, and many people believed that the chances of finding unusual or standout coins were becoming smaller. In other words, this was a period where expectations were lower when it came to discovering something special. And that is exactly why this coin became so interesting, because when expectations are low, discoveries feel even more powerful. The 1995 quarter entered circulation quietly. Just like the others, it was produced in large numbers, distributed across the country, and used in everyday transactions. It passed through countless hands, often without anyone even glancing at the date. For most people, it was just another coin, something to spend, something to ignore, something to forget. But in the world of collecting, nothing is ever truly just another coin. Because collectors understand something that most people don't. They know that even in years of high production, small differences can exist. Differences that are easy to miss, but impossible to ignore once they are discovered. With the 1995 Washington quarter, those differences started to appear in a very subtle way. At first, it was not widely discussed. Only a few collectors began noticing that certain examples looked far better than the rest. The details were sharper. The surfaces appeared cleaner. The overall appearance of the coin had a kind of strength and clarity that was not typical for coins that had been circulating. This raised a question. Why did some coins from this year look so much better than others? That question led to closer examination. And as collectors began studying more examples, something became clear. These standout coins were not common. In fact, they were surprisingly difficult to find. Most 1995 quarters showed the normal signs of wear or average quality. But a small number stood apart, and those are the ones that began attracting attention. Now imagine being one of the first collectors to notice this. You are going through coins, comparing them carefully, looking for anything unusual. Suddenly, one coin catches your eye. It looks different, cleaner, more detailed. You compare it to others from the same year, and the difference is obvious. In that moment, you realize you may have found something that others have overlooked. That is how discoveries begin. And once a discovery begins, it does not stay hidden for long. Word starts to spread. Other collectors begin searching. More examples are examined. And slowly a pattern emerges. The rare, high-quality versions of the 1995 D quarter are not just random. They are consistently better than the average coins from that year. And because they are so difficult to find, their importance grows quickly. This is where the concept of condition becomes even more powerful. Because in coin collecting, two coins can be identical in design, identical in year, identical in origin, but completely different in value. The difference comes down to preservation. How well the coin has survived over time. How much detail remains. How clean the surface is. These factors can transform a simple coin into something extraordinary. The 1995 D Washington quarter is a perfect example of this idea. Most of these coins were used heavily. They were part of everyday life. They were spent, dropped, stored, and handled repeatedly. Over time, that usage wore them down. Details faded. Surfaces became scratched or dull. And those coins remained common. But a small number escaped that fate. Maybe they were set aside early. Maybe they were saved by someone who collected coins casually. Maybe they were simply lucky enough to avoid heavy use. Whatever the reason, they survived in a condition that was far above average. And those are the coins that collectors began to focus on. Now think about how rare that situation is. Out of millions of coins, only a tiny fraction remains in exceptional condition. And out of that fraction, only a few display the level of sharpness and clarity that collectors are looking for. That is what creates true scarcity. Not just low numbers, but low numbers combined with high demand. And demand for these coins has continued to grow. Because once collectors recognize that something is rare, they begin competing to find the best examples. And when competition increases, value often follows. That is the cycle that drives the coin collecting market. Discovery leads to attention. Attention leads to demand. And demand leads to value. But what makes this story even more exciting is that these coins are still out there. They have not all been found. They have not all been identified. Some are still sitting in collections that have not been examined closely. Some are mixed in with ordinary coins that no one has taken the time to study. And that means the opportunity still exists. That is what makes this journey so interesting for you. Because you do not need to be a professional collector to start looking. You do not need expensive equipment or years of experience. All you need is curiosity and the willingness to pay attention to details. Once you start doing that, you begin to see coins differently. You begin to notice the small things that others miss. And those small things can lead to big discoveries. The 1995 D Washington quarter teaches us that even in a modern, high-production era, rarity can still exist. It reminds us that valuable coins are not always obvious. They do not always stand out immediately. Sometimes they require patience. Sometimes they require comparison. And sometimes they require a second look. Now imagine this moment once again. You are going through a group of quarters not expecting anything unusual. You come across a 1995 coin with a small D mint mark. At first, it seems ordinary. But then you remember what you have learned. You look closer. The details appear stronger. The surface looks cleaner. The coin feels different somehow. And in that moment, everything changes. Because what was once just another coin becomes something worth investigating. That is the power of knowledge. It transforms the way you see things. It turns ordinary objects into potential discoveries. And it opens the door to opportunities that most people never even consider. And we are not done yet. Because the next coin takes this idea even further. It comes from a year that many collectors completely overlooked for a long time. A year that did not seem important until something surprising brought it into the spotlight. Now we move into the fourth coin, and this is where the story becomes even more surprising, because this is the kind of year that most collectors once ignored completely. By now, you have already seen how coins from different years can hide unexpected value. But the 1987 P Washington quarter takes that idea and pushes it even further. Because for a long time, this coin was not even supposed to be in the hands of everyday people in the same way as others. Back in 1987, something unusual happened with the production of quarters. Instead of releasing large quantities directly into general circulation as usual, A significant number of quarters from that year were primarily issued in mint sets. That means many people did not receive them through normal daily transactions like they did with other years. Instead, they were packaged carefully and sold to collectors in official sets. Now, at first, that might not sound important. But think about it carefully. When coins are not widely circulated, fewer people handle them. Fewer people use them, and fewer chances exist for them to be saved randomly in everyday collections. This changes the entire dynamic of how those coins are discovered years later. Because instead of being spread everywhere like typical quarters, many 1987p coins remained inside sets, untouched for years. And while that might sound like it would make them common in high condition, the reality is more complex. Not every set was preserved perfectly. Not every coin remained flawless. Over time, handling, storage conditions, and even small environmental factors affected the quality of many of these coins. So when collectors began looking closely at 1987p quarters years later, they noticed something interesting. Truly exceptional examples were not as easy to find as people expected. Yes, many coins existed, but coins with sharp details, strong surfaces, and near-perfect appearance were far less common than assumed. And once again, that gap between expectation and reality created opportunity. Imagine being a collector who decides to examine an old mint set from 1987. You open it carefully, looking at each coin one by one. First, everything seems normal, but then one quarter stands out. The details are incredibly sharp. The surface looks clean and almost untouched. It has a kind of presence that the others do not. In that moment, you realize something important. Not all coins from the same set are equal. And that realization is what drives deeper exploration. Collectors began comparing coins from different sets, studying small differences, looking for patterns. And as they did, it became clear that only a limited number of 1987p quarters reached the level of quality that serious collectors were searching for. These were not just well-preserved coins. These were coins that stood at the very top in terms of condition and detail. And that is where rarity begins to take shape again. Because when something exists but only in a very small number of truly outstanding examples, it becomes desirable. And when it becomes desirable, collectors begin competing to find it. The story of the 1987p Washington quarter is different from the previous coins in one key way. It was not about coins being heavily circulated and only a few surviving in great condition. Instead, it was about coins being preserved from the beginning, but only a few reaching a level of perfection that collectors consider exceptional. That difference makes this coin even more fascinating, because it challenges a common assumption. Many people believe that if a coin is kept in a set, it must automatically be valuable or in perfect condition. But that is not always true. Condition is not guaranteed. Perfection is not automatic. Even coins that were protected from the start can develop small flaws, marks, or imperfections over time. And in the world of collecting, those small imperfections matter. They are the difference between a coin being ordinary and a coin being extraordinary. Now think about the number of 1987 mint sets that were opened over the years. Some were handled carelessly. Some were stored in less than ideal conditions. Some were even broken apart, with coins mixed into general collections. All of these factors reduced the number of truly pristine examples available today. That is why high-quality 1987p quarters became something collectors started paying close attention to. Because finding one is not as easy as simply opening a set. You have to look carefully. You have to compare. You have to recognize the difference between a good coin and a great one. And that brings us back to you. Because just like the previous coins, this one could still be closer than you think. Maybe someone in your family purchased mint sets years ago and stored them away. Maybe those sets have not been opened or examined in a long time. Maybe inside one of them is a coin that stands out far above the rest. That possibility is what makes this journey so exciting. Because it turns something simple into something meaningful. It transforms old collections into potential discoveries. And it gives you a reason to look again at things you may have ignored before. The 1987p Washington quarter teaches us another important lesson. It shows that value is not always about how many coins exist. Sometimes it is about how many truly exceptional examples exist. And that number can be much smaller than anyone expects. Now imagine holding one of these coins in your hand. At first, it looks like any other quarter. But as you examine it more closely, you begin to notice the details. the sharpness of the design, the clarity of the lettering, the clean surface. Slowly, you start to realize that this coin is different. And in that moment, something shifts. Because what once felt ordinary now feels important. That is the moment every collector lives for. The moment when a simple object reveals something more. And now we are about to move into the final coin of this journey. And this last coin brings everything together in a way that connects all the patterns you have seen so far. It comes from a year that seems completely normal, but hides a story that surprised collectors once it was fully understood. Now we arrive at the final part of this journey. The moment where everything connects, everything makes sense, and everything becomes real. Up until now, you have seen a pattern repeat itself again and again. Ordinary-looking coins. Years that seemed unimportant. Small details that most people ignore. And yet, each time, something hidden turned those ordinary coins into something far more valuable than anyone expected. And now, we come to the final coin that brings all of these ideas together in one powerful example. The 1988p Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin feels no different from the others you have seen. Carries the same familiar design, the same portrait, the same overall appearance that people have recognized for decades. It does not stand out. It does not demand attention. And that is exactly why it became so important. Because by now, you already understand something that most people still overlook. The most valuable coins are often the ones that do not look valuable at all. The 1988p quarter was produced during a time when coin manufacturing had become highly efficient. Systems were in place. Processes were refined. And most people believed that coins from this period would be consistent, predictable, and uniform. In other words, nothing surprising. But as you have already seen, reality does not always follow expectations. Collectors began to notice that certain 1988p quarters showed something unusual. Just like the previous coins, it was not obvious at first. It required attention. It required comparison. It required someone willing to look beyond the surface. Some coins displayed stronger details, cleaner surfaces, a level of sharpness that was not common for that year. And just like before, the more collectors searched, the more they realized that these standout examples were not easy to find. Now pause and think about that. Another year, another coin, another situation where most people saw nothing special, and yet something rare was quietly hiding in plain sight. This is not a coincidence. This is the nature of coin collecting. Value does not always announce itself. It reveals itself slowly over time to those who are paying attention. The 1988p Washington quarter became the final piece of this pattern. It confirmed something that collectors had started to believe after years of discoveries. That even modern coins, even coins produced in massive numbers, can hold incredible value if the right conditions are met. And those conditions are always the same: rarity, condition, demand. When these three elements come together, something powerful happens. Now imagine the journey of one of these coins. It leaves the mint, perfect and untouched. It enters circulation, where most coins begin to lose their sharpness and detail over time. But somehow this coin avoids heavy use. Maybe it is saved early. Maybe it is placed in a collection. Maybe it simply gets lucky. Years pass. Decades pass. And while millions of other coins become worn and ordinary, this one remains different. Keeps its detail. Keeps its clarity. Keeps the qualities that collectors value most. Then one day, someone notices it. That moment, that single moment of recognition, is where everything changes. Because once a coin is recognized for what it truly is, it is no longer just a coin. It becomes a discovery. And discoveries are what drive this entire world. Now, take a step back and look at everything you have seen in this video. The 1980p showed you how overlooked years can hide unexpected quality. The 1990D proved that even modern coins can carry surprising rarity. The 1995D reminded you that condition can transform value completely. The 1987p revealed that even preserved coins are not always equal. And now, the 1988p brings all of these ideas together into one final realization: that valuable coins are not always where people expect them to be. They are often hiding in the most ordinary places. Old collections, forgotten boxes, drawers that have not been opened in years, coin jars sitting quietly in the corner of a room. This is What makes this journey personal? Because it means the story does not end here. It continues with you. Now comes the moment that brings everything into focus. Because no matter how interesting the story is, no matter how fascinating the history is, there is always one question that everyone wants answered. What are these coins actually worth? And this is where the quiet story you have been listening to turns into something truly shocking. Because when the right coin is found, in the right condition, with the right level of rarity, the numbers can be almost unbelievable. The 1980p Washington quarter has reached values as high as $176,000. The 1990D Washington quarter has reached values around $140,000. The 1995D Washington quarter has climbed to approximately $129,000. The 1987p Washington quarter has reached around $153,000. And the 1988p Washington quarter has reached values close to $149,000. Take a moment and let that sink in. These are not ancient treasures, these are not gold coins. These are ordinary quarters that people once used without a second thought. And yet, under the right circumstances, they have reached values that most people would never imagine. Now imagine going back to your own collection, looking through coins that you have ignored for years, checking dates that you never thought were important. And suddenly, realizing that something you already own could be worth far more than you ever expected. That possibility is real. And that is the reason this world continues to grow. Because every day, people are discovering coins that others overlooked. Every day, something ordinary becomes extraordinary. And the next discovery could belong to anyone, including you. So before you leave this video, take a moment to think about where your coins are right now. Think about the collections you have not checked. Think about the coins you may have dismissed as common. Because hidden within those coins could be a story just like the ones you have heard today. And if you want to continue discovering coins like this, make sure you are subscribed because the next video might reveal another coin that people are ignoring right now, but we'll be searching for tomorrow.